Hi folks, you're with Taskless Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the globalists and the globalist cabal, and we're getting a good idea through this US aid thing that is being uncovered in the United States, just how vast the funding machine is, the money machine. The corrupt money machine is that's buying all this propaganda the world over to malign, denigrate and undermine and tell just terrible lies about white societies. White Christian societies are being maligned and maliciously maligned, left, right and centre. And there's nothing organic about it. It's all being paid for by the globalist cabal that are using Western taxpayer dollars. Every Western white citizen is paying through their taxes for the privilege of being hated by their own governments, for goodness sakes. I mean, this has got to be a world first, hasn't it? I mean, has this ever happened before in human history? Well, with the globalist cabal in control, it is happening and has been happening. And the extent of it, I think, might now be exposed by the work of the Trump administration in the United States, just showing how many trillions over the last few years that have been spent on producing an anti-white, anti-Christian narrative across the Western world. And I think they've only just started on that process. When we look at all the other areas of government that they're yet to get to and yet to start reviewing and auditing, then we can assume that the annual expenditure for the globalist cabal, just out of the United States, I mean, we haven't even looked at Britain or Germany or France yet, just the annual expenditure on globalist propaganda and globalist lies, globalist schemes, globalist treacheries and so on is going to, I would suggest, is going to be somewhere around $2+ trillion per annum just in the United States. So that'll give you an idea as to, I always wondered why the big banks were taking such a lax attitude to Western governments running large deficits. They didn't used to. They used to really come down quite hard on that, on the basis that, there was a lack of good money management, maybe probity, standards of probity and prudential standards were slipping. And so the World Banks used to finger wag governments on that, but they suddenly stopped doing that. And at the same time as they stopped finger wagging Western governments running large government expenditure deficits, that's when the globalization project kicked off into high gear. The mass migration and so on. So those two are clearly connected. But anyway, this idea of rewriting history, what's been happening recently, or for some time, I guess, is the rewriting of Western white Christian history. To some extent, you can argue that they're rewriting Black history or Chinese history or whatever history to try and portray, the Black culture as being, it was all Wakanda, it was all super high tech and people that spend all day in the gym and wearing with very modern haircuts and that sort of stuff, and trying to portray Africa as this is a place that even certainly in Central Africa and in Black Africa, even in the 1800s, there were many places in Africa that still did not have the wheel. They were still living the hunter-gatherer social structures that they had 10,000 years previously. So over 10,000, 15,000 years, they technically had advanced not one step, which seems quite astonishing. The same in Australia. The Australian Aborigines were Stone Age people that had not advanced technically over 20,000 years. And again, this seems astonishing, but there you go. Nonetheless, the rewriting of history now. Those at the forefront of the cultural wars, if I can call it that, want to rewrite history, and particularly the BBC in Britain and various organisations that are associated with, egged on by the globalist machine, by the way, that do historical dramas about British history. One of the things I used to like about the historical dramas in Britain is they did stick reasonably close to the factual history, and very good costuming, and the locations were good, and so on. So it was something I appreciated as historical drama that would actually capture the attitudes and views and behaviors and again the props and everything of that time. No more. I mean, some of the costuming might, but no more. So now black people or non-white people, but mainly black, are being inserted into all historical dramas and all period pieces. For example, here's a 1950s show about a small village in rural England in the 1950s, and all the smart people are minorities. The doctor, the doctor who's way smarter than anybody is a young woman, and the judge is a black man, and so on. So all the positions of authority and prestige are occupied by minorities, and even if they're talking about a period in history where there wasn't barely a single black person in Britain, they still will find a way of inventing a position or a character and then putting the black person in this position of authority. Now, at the same time, they run the narrative that blacks were oppressed and put upon and so on, and were only slaves and were treated badly. And at the same time, they're also judges, doctors, lawyers, scientists, and sundry geniuses. I wonder how they can sort of square it away that black people can be both at the same time. How can you be a victim and a slave and also be a genius scientist? Anyway, so the idea of elevating the black people into positions, or minorities, as you'd say, in the positions of power, authority, prestige, and so on, isn't to elevate the status of those minority groups, but rather to diminish the status of straight white Christian males. They were all colonialists, evil, bad, Nazi, fascist, and in every walk of life, in every sphere of life, straight white people are being substituted for minorities. Now, I saw a gender studies course material some years ago now, probably must be getting on for 20 years ago now, where they went through every major invention or technological advancement, particularly since, say, the early 1800s onwards, which is really when the Industrial Revolution kicked off. And they hypothesized that in reality, every single one of these technical advancements had been made possible or outright discovered or invented by a minority person. So really, you think Edison, did the light bulb, but in fact it was the black lesbian housekeeper that really did it, not Edison. Or you might think Louis Pasteur discovered germs, but actually it was the homosexual Asian guy that worked in his household that really did it. And it was really the woman that did it, and really the black woman is really this guy's wife that did it, and he was an evil wife-beating fascist Nazi, but it was she the one who invented the jet engine propulsion, and so and on it went. So now it was a document that was a testimony to the insanity of gender studies, that not a single credit could go to a straight white male, not one, zero, zip, and it was all minorities that did it. Of course, it was sheer and utter madness, but this was the sort of propaganda they were pushing in gender studies and in a lot of the sociology courses, that straight white males, their accomplishments, their achievements, unless they're bad things, were all illegitimate. Now, if there was a massacre or a shooting or something bad, that was the straight white male. That could be, they could take full credit for that. But anything that was positive, anything that suggested accomplishment and prestige or positive notoriety, none of that was to be allowed. And that mentality, and I spoke to a lady who had a gender studies degree, and she'd got that some years earlier, and she said no, she studied that previously. So this has been around for 30 years plus, this attitude. So if we look at it in terms of just university course turnover of students, that means at least 10 generations of gender studies, sociology, and all, whole lot of other courses that are caught up in that sociology orbit of the gender studies and the radicalization of that type of education. 10 generations of them are out now in the workforce and out in society, and they're the ones that are getting hired into the USAID and all these programs, and getting paid for. Now, what USA did, it's paid for this rewriting of history, and it has made grants and handouts and kickbacks and under the tables and corrupt payments, whatever you want. It's made it conditional on the denigration of white Western Christian society. Unless your entertainment is denigrating, straight white Christians, so you won't get any money. Simple as that. And if you look at the amount of media outlets and cultural outlets, outlets that are putting on stage plays, script writing groups that write scripts for TV productions or movies or whatever, or groups that try and heavy and shame, say, video game manufacturers and producers into injecting gay lesbian themes and things like that. All of these groups are all being paid for by, directly or indirectly, by USAID. They're all being, none of them would exist without this funding. None of them could exist on this. So when you look at the stage plays about gay lesbian themes, for example, there's been a gay lesbian version of a musical that's been produced in Sydney recently, and everyone in it is now portrayed as a gay lesbian character or trans. Now, there's no way that people are going to watch it. Firstly, they have to deceive people to come along, because they don't tell them it's a gay lesbian thing. The underground information machine amongst the LGBT community promotes that, but outside of it, you don't know. So just as a ordinary member of the public, you turn and say, "Hey, I didn't pay for this." Too late, you've paid. So. But the stage play company that puts it on, or they're funded by an NGO. The NGO is then funded by USAID and so on. So none of these cultural things we see, the propaganda, the placard waving mobs, the media coverage that tries to incite and agitate the public to say, well, this is the next big thing. Trans people are dying at 10 million, 100 times the rate of it. And, all this it's all lies upon lies upon lies, all of it fabricated and put around, including inserting black characters. So you look at the period of the 1500s in England, King Henry VIII, and find that half the people in the supposed historical production are black. And there's, the women are way smarter than all the men and this sort of thing. And everything's being turned on its head. Now, this is a subject or an issue of great delight for the leftists and the lesbians here. We're turning everything on its head. We're winning the cultural war. We're putting those Nazis in their place. Now, when there's when you can't find any Nazis and can't find any evil, misogynist, fascists and so on, you have to invent them. And this is where the parallel world of delusion comes in, because they have these people of the resistance, they're fighting Hitler, but there's no Hitler, there are no Nazis to fight. So you have to invent them. And this is also what USAID has done. They funded the invention of these supposed Nazis. And they've done two things. One is that, apart from funding the so-called resistance against an imaginary enemy, but they funded the idea of inventing Nazis. So just recently in Australia, there was some legislation about stopping misinformation and on the internet, that sort of thing, and so there wasn't really getting traction. No one really wanted it, or the activists did, the globalists did, but it's just a way of shutting down anti-globalist opinion. That's all. So what the what the authorities did, they cooked up all these supposed neo-Nazis that would all dress in black and march in unison up and down for the cameras. So they go, look, see, look at those Nazis. And supposedly there's this rampant anti-Semitism. Is it caused by the Palestinian mobs that take over the streets and yell anti-Semitism? No, it's not caused by them. It's not caused by brown people. It's caused by straight white Christian fascist neo-Nazis who've got swastikas, tattooed into their heads. suddenly, just as the government needs an excuse to deliver a supposed misinformation legislation, suddenly all these Nazis just sprout up out of the ground, marching up and down in front of the cameras. Yeah, right, sure. And this is what the globalist cabal does. They invent the Nazi, they invent the problem that they're supposed to be fighting against. So look, see, we are fighting this bad guys. Look at all those Nazis. Oh, look at that guy waving a swastika over there. Oh, look at this. And so it's very much a ginned up thing. But all the groups, the media groups, the NGO groups, all of these people are funded by the globalist cabal. None of it is organic, none of it is natural, and none of these groups would exist. Some years ago, I went to one of these. It was like a divorce law, a divorce industry type gathering, and all of these people were fanatics on the family is an evil device that oppresses women. Women are being oppressed and beaten. Women are dying at phenomenal rates by their evil, wicked Nazi fascist husbands, and so on and so forth. And it was all wall-to-wall propaganda, and yet they were in, as all these things are, they were in probably one of the most expensive hotels and function rooms in Australia, in the whole of Australia. This would have been one of the most expensive, and there were many hundreds of delegates from all over the place, from third world. They even flew in women from Stone Age tribal societies in the middle of fucking New Guinea were being flown in for this so-called conference, and so I sort of went along and had a look around. Now the government was paying for all of this. It was an absolute hysterical hate on men, hate on families, hate on straight men fest. That's all it was. And it was shrieking hysteria wall to wall. And you'd be lucky to find even one person there who would have disagreed. And they were all anti-men, anti-family, and anti-marriage, and this sort of thing, all funded by the government. Now, the government was all funded by NGOs, USAID, but the government was sending many hundreds of delegates, and there was a super PAC type payment where you could pay $10,000 or however much it was in the thousands to attend, and this is what was paying for it. So the taxpayer was paying for the government to assemble a bunch of angry, hate-filled lesbians to denounce all straight white men and denounce marriage and and so on. The government was actually paying. So your tax dollars were going for one of the key institutions in society, marriage, to be hated on for 3 days. I mean, the insanity of that. Now, whilst that was lavishly funded, the food was lavish. It was sumptuous, actually. They were staying in, again, one of the most expensive hotels in Australia. And just as I sauntered around, I was asking these people, they were flying business class. They weren't flying coach or cattle class. They were flying business class. And this is the extent, or a manifestation, it is the amount of money and resources that's being put at the disposal of the hate straight white men, hate Christian, hate Western society. Massive resources, monumental resources. And because these people are so well funded, they're able to ply their hatred. And again, because the globalists own the media establishment, no one's calling to account. No one's pointing out the outrageousness of this. And in fact, they're giving it the fullest support. So again, all this Nazis and everything, they're all invented. I mean, look at the 2020 election that was outrageously rigged by the globalists to prevent Trump from getting in. And Biden got 81 million votes. Yeah, sure. And yet the news, the media outlets were saying, well, America's got a real problem here because 70 odd million people voted for For Trump, that means there are 70 million Nazis. So everywhere there's Nazis everywhere. Even Biden is saying, people who go to the Trump rallies are all Nazis. And yet the media supports it. No one's calling it out. Now, that's changing now. And hopefully all that funding that these people are getting needs to be cut off. But they're very good, these guys. When one source of funding is removed, then they'll get the British government to fund them. So what I believe the Trump team needs to do is to make sure all funding is cut off. If you want to fund those straight white male hating groups, then fine, do that, you dickhead government of Britain or wherever. But then you got to have 5 million% tariffs. So, not that, but that's because remember, the United States has used their economic and trading clout to strong arm many countries into adopting globalist policies, such as the mass migration, such as spreading LGBTQ and so on. So Trump is just going to reverse that, use American power in the same way that it has been used, but to reverse the damage that's been done by the globalists. You've been a Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.